All right, so what you've all been waiting for, or not, how to get information from a user, because really we can do lots of stuff in Python, but none of it really becomes useful until we can take input from users, because that's what, as I described before, programs do. If they do the same thing over and over and over again, we don't really need a program for them. So how do we get information from a user? Well, it's actually pretty simple. But this is a topic that sometimes some people get a little bit confused about. So I'm going to try to explain it as best I can. First, remember the print statement. I'm going to just do a print statement real quick. All right, that's the print statement. And if I were to run that right now, what I'm going to get is, I thought I ran it. Oh, yep, what I get is this output. It's text, right? You will notice that once it prints this out, it moves on to this, which means the program's over. Some people get a little confused on the input statement because the input statement looks a little bit like the print statement and it acts a little bit like the print statement. In that if I say print, hello, how are you? I get text. If I say input, which is our input statement, hello, how are you? And I run it, it's going to pop up and say, hello, how are you? But you'll notice something. It did not immediately go to the next line and show me these red arrows because it is waiting for an answer. When I use the input instead of print, not only does it print some text here, but then it asks, or it's waiting for the user to input information. So this, while it looks like the print statement and it actually does print something, it does not act the same after that. After that, because it's a result of the input statement, not a result of the print statement, it waits until I type in something. So, Mr. Long, and I hit enter. Now, my program immediately ends because I haven't told it to do anything other than ask me for a name. Or, no, ask me, how are you? And I just realized I answered Mr. Long to how are you, and that's not really an appropriate response, but you get the idea. So let's change that. Hello, what's your name? All right, so same deal. It would have printed out, hello, what's your name? And it would have asked me for my name. And when I hit enter, then it would have immediately ended. Now, I want to point out a couple things real quick. First of all, you'll notice that down here in the console, the shell, when it runs this program and I type in my answer and I hit enter, it looks all squished together. So something I like to do when I create input statements is to put an extra space. And sometimes if I'm asking for like numeric input, I'll even put a colon there. And because when we see the output, it looks nicer. So I'm going to run this just to show you. So now, hello, what's your name? And I type Mr. Long. I hit enter. It looks a little better in the output. All right, that's just totally visual. And I will say a lot of the things I'm going to tell you when I say it's just visual, it just helps the user, you should really consider implementing them because as you write code, you want to make it look good. You want to make it work well. All right, so here's the problem with this. So if I want to output something, like let's say my program is just going to ask someone their name and then say, hello, whatever your name is, or hi, whatever your name is. So what I could do is I could say print, print, hi. And now I want to print whatever their name was. But I don't know it because I didn't save it. Remember, the computer has to have everything saved in memory for it or it can't do anything with it. So even though I have this input and I answered the question, I can't get at that answer because I didn't save it anywhere. So what I have to do is I have to save it as a variable. So what I do is I add a little extra. I say x equals. And now it's going to output, or it's going to save whatever my user types in as x. So if my user types in koala bear, it's going to save koala bear as x. So when I want to output it, I can say hi x, and I'm going to run this. What's your name? Koala. Hi, Koala. Let me run it again. What's your name? Kangaroo. I don't know why I keep coming up with Australian animals as my choices, but hi, Kangaroo. It's my name. Mr. Long. Hi, Mr. Long. So you'll see what it did was it took the information from my user, it saved it as X, and then it printed out. Remember, we just finished working with the print statement. Hi, whatever. Now, what if I wanted to say, hi, whatever your name is, how are you today? So I can put that in a print statement as well. Now, keep in mind, it's a question, but this is a print statement, so it's not going to give my user an opportunity to answer that question, but it's just a polite, how are you today? I don't really care about the answer anyway, right? So say, Mr. Long, hi, Mr. Long, how are you today? Another way I could have done that, back to our last video, I could have said Z equals hi plus, oh, I want a space in here because remember when we do concatenation we don't get a space. Hi plus X plus how are you today? And then I'm just going to change this to Z, and I'm going to get kind of the same output as I did previously, because now that I have that X captured in a variable, I can use it for other things. Now, see what happened here. I forgot to put in an extra space, so hi, Mr. Long, how are you today? That didn't work out so well. I needed that little space in there, and that would have fixed that. But both worked. All right. So that is how we take input from a user. It's really simple. A couple of words of warning about this. First of all, the print statement is really flexible. Remember, the print statement will do the print statement will allow us to do some stuff like print Z X. And when I do that, I will get, hello, what's your name? Oops. Mr. Long, hi, Mr. Long. Okay, works great. But the input statement doesn't do that. So I cannot do this. I cannot say, hello, come, oh, I've got to change this. So I'm gonna change this to Y. I cannot say hello X, what's your name, as a question. The input statement doesn't allow me to put together strings that way. So if I try to run this, it's going to ask me my name. And then I'm going to get, because this using commas to separate the strings for output, that works in the print statement. It does not work in an input statement. All right, so that's thing number one. So in this case, I would have to build my string. Remember, we talked about building strings. I'd have to say hi X, whoops, hi plus X plus, and this is why you got to learn concatenation instead of just using the comma all the time in the print statement, because you can't use it if you want to use how are you today? And now I can say I can say this. So what it's going to do is it's going to ask me for my name. It's going to say, hi, whatever name I put in, how are you today? And whatever I answer to that, it's going to save as Z. So I could then print, I'm glad or sorry to hear that you are Y. All right, so now it's going to respond to my second input. So if I run this, and I said I put glad or sorry because I don't know if he's going to put something good or bad. What's your name? Mr. Long. How are you today? See, and I forgot that space again. Mr. Long, how are you today? Great. I'm glad or sorry to hear that you're great. All right. If I ran it again, what's your name? Mr. Long, and I'm going to trick it and put a space in there. Hello, Mr. Long, how are you today? And it has that space now because I put it in as a user. You don't want your user to have to put in spaces. You want to take care of that yourself. Hi, Mr. Long, how are you today? Awful. I'm glad or sorry to hear that you're awful. All right, so that's how we take input. Now, I want to show you one more thing because here's what happens all the time, every year. Every year I see this. So instead of using input, which is asking for input from a user, I see people do this. X equals print. Hello, what's your name? Okay, it's going to kind of pretend to work, but it's not going to ask me a question. And if I try to print the result, if I try to print X, what they gave back to me, watch what happens. Hello, what's your name? None. Why? Because this does not return a value. And we'll talk about, we're going to talk about functions next time, but functions like input sometimes return a value, and the input statement returns the value as a value, whatever the user typed in. Print statement doesn't return a value, it returns a none. So X is equal to none because it got no value from this. That's one reason you can't use print instead of input. All right, so that is how we take information from a user. Use the last video in this one to help you with today's assignment.